It not quite like oil paint. Oil paint, doing this right here would cost thousands of dollars in just paint if you did it with oil paint. Considering just a little small tube of white would run you about $8 or somewhere around that amount.
And then all these painting techniques you learned from experience, or
Trial and error.
Trial and error.
And that, and watching other people, you still basically, if you can't only learn so much on your own, you still got to look at the masters. If you want to, learn more. The masters are all, it's good to look in art history to find out things, and instructional books and
So you mean look at their paintings and you could figure out what they must have done by looking at the painting, or
that, or or instruction from books or libraries free, or you meet other artists, and early age you always seem eager to find out how things are done, and if you can run across the right person to tell you about their technique, then you just come up with all kinds of barrage of different stuff to build your own personality for artwork, your own style. Not necessarily copy, but take from each person basics, principles that go along with artwork, like mixing colors or how to shade, different little things, how to utilize light or different things, and just kind of add that in, and then try to go with your own freestyle from the things that you learn. But never be too proud to listen to others, and don't think, and basically never consider yourself a master, because that's when you're gearing yourself up for trouble. You guys should always be in a process of learning. You never stop learning. Never close the door on learning, because when you do, then you become the very thing that you're probably against. So I'm still a student for the rest of my life.
And you did a stint in the Army?
The Navy.
The Navy?
Yeah, I was in the Navy for the mid-70s, and I got out of that.
And you specialized in radio, or?
No, I actually started out as a gunner's mate, and then once I got into the fleet, then I got into, I was on a ship that got into a collision out at sea and about sunk us, and we ended up having to be dry docked over in Europe. Then they kind of got rid of half the crew because they couldn't use the boat, and I ended up doing guard mail runs in Italy. That's about the time that their president got kidnapped by the Red Brigade. So I had to become basically a postal clerk, but it was kind of a shaky ground. They didn't know if Italy was going to become communist. They gave us a map. They had blue zones, red zones, then they had neutral zones. And even when our ship was in dry dock, right across from it was a Russian ship, which there were Russians in the same port at that time. Like I said, they didn't know how the country was going to swing, because their political system was in turmoil over the kidnapping, which the president was killed. They did find his body, and at that time. And then, so I just did the guard mail runs. Then also, we were told not to socialize with the Russians. Then me and two of my friends, an Indian American and a black, we all decided to go camping up on Mount Vesuvius, to camp out up there to the campground. And while we were up there, we met 3 Russians, which were all 3 from different ethnic, but they were Russian, in the Navy. And we kind of hung out all together for the weekend. We couldn't really communicate. You know, neither one of us knew each other's language, but we could kind of get the point across that, which probably could have end up going to captain's mast or court martial. They knew that we were hanging out with Russians. But, and them, you know, they may end up in a prison somewhere up in Siberia if they got caught doing it. But that was good. You know, like I said, people were basically good. It's just the system and things, the way they're led to believe is what's doing all the harm.
Okay, I'm rolling again. So when you decided that so initially you did portraits, is that correct?
I was a portrait artist, in which you could almost starve to death doing that unless you already got a big name. Because back then what I found out, most people didn't understand what went into it and material cost and time. So basically after you do a mural a portrait for somebody, you're only working for like $1 an hour.
Yeah.
And so I decided to start doing, you know, my own things that was in my head. Then I tried to build up like a little art show kind of thing. And that's when all the paintings got stolen. And that was in Redondo Beach, California. And that's when I pretty much was upset over that. Really didn't like California that much. Even though I stayed there a number of times, LA twice and San Diego twice. But ended up decided doing the murals mainly because you know, the whole idea is that you're trying to express yourself. You're trying to say what's on your mind when you're doing stuff. And every so often you do get the opportunity to painting what you really want to paint. You don't always get to paint what you want, but when you do, the doors open up to make a statement. And then that's basically what any artist, true artist, really wants to do is express what's inside of him. He's got something, and he or she's got something inside, and they want to say something. They got something to say to the world. You know, it's their thing that's inside of them that needs to be out. And that's basically it. You know, they want to say what's inside of them.
And so when you were in your 20s and you did the paintings in California, was that the first time you'd done artworks?
No, I started doing artwork actually at an early age. I never took art in high school. You know, it was required to take it in grade school, and then I always pretty much was interested in doing stuff. You know, I could spend all day with a box of crayons, you know, and that's basically where it all comes. You know, it's always good to encourage children to go into the arts, because you never know what might become of them. They may become somebody very, very important in the world, makes changes, you know, for good. And the arts is the way to do it, through visual art or music or poetry. It could impact the world.
And so you did drawings or paintings or some kind of artworks throughout your childhood?
Pretty much, yeah. I kind of did mainly the visual arts, but I was making poetry, and I just passionate little kid, you know. But when I got in high school, I had a different idea of things, you know, about electronics and this, that, and the other. But just eventually end up going back to the artwork, because that's where I was meant to be.
So really, when you decided to make that your profession, you were going back to what you really loved from childhood.
Yeah, my first love kind of thing. You know, what you know, what she was designed to be. And I'm all for doing things as what you would be a child. Besides, you know, we're supposed to be made in the likeness of God. God's the greatest artist there ever was. He created us, didn't he? So it kind of puts you in a different plane when you're doing the arts of any kind, because you're being